Howdy, folks. I'm Mark, and today I'm joined once again by Josh Broccolo of the Backlog Breakdown. Josh, thank you again for joining me for this short talk about video games.
Well, thank you again for inviting me on for this short talk
Well,
about video games.
absolutely. I'm glad you're here for this short talk about video games.
About video games.
But you, other people out there, you're listening to Quick Play, short talks about video games. So let's get right into it.
Gross.
Did you say gross?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. I don't know, it just really threw me off. Here we are. We're talking about the game of the decade, which is a little silly because it's 2025. It's not 2030. It's 2025, which means it's 5 years into the decade, which that means it's a little ongoing series of where I'm asking each of my guests, like, hey, what's your game of the decade as a checkpoint and kind of like a check-in on video games in the 2020s, in the roaring 20s. And that's also to see how things are going, how the decade going, what are you into now, but also just a nice little excuse to talk about some games that we like. So,
yeah.
Josh, so far, what has been your game of the decade?
Well, my game of the decade, it was a little unassuming, even though I've enjoyed the series thus far. I did not, just say it was unassuming.
Sure.
My game of the decade thus far is Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So you go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say how it starts out, but no, you had a question. What were you gonna say?
Well, I just want to see you've played the whole series. I'm not ignorant of it all, but I haven't played any of them. So
Okay.
How long have you been playing the Xenoblade series? Like from the Wii or more recently?
So surprisingly, yes, I have actually played every game in the series. I have not gone back. The creator of the series, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but the Xeno games, there's like Xenosaga and Xenogears. I have not played any of those.
Sure.
None of them. I own Xenogears, but I never played it, which I know. Travesty. Sorry, haven't done it.
Well, that's what your whole podcast is about, so.
Yeah, right. About not playing video games. No, backlog, right? Yeah, there you go.
Of course, yes.
But as far as the Xenoblade games, yes, there was a bit. If you were into video games at the time on the Wii, it was a big deal that it actually got released here in America. That and a few other games. So I did pick up 2 of those games. One was by the creator of Final Fantasy. He had his own game, The Last Story. So picked up that one and was able to snag a copy of Xenoblade Chronicles for Wii, which was a GameStop exclusive, which is kind of crazy.
Whoa!
So when it dropped its price to like $40, I was like, yeah, I'll pick that up. But funny story, because if you don't know, like it was not set for release in America. They released it in the European regions. That's why all the people have British accents.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a little known game, but then it became this bigger deal when it finally came to America because of kind of the uproar and things like that, of people wanting it here in America. So I did pick it up and play it on the Wii.
Nice.
I actually own it on Switch also, but I haven't played that version. It came out for 3DS as well. But then Xenoblade Chronicles X, which is now on Switch,
right. Yes.
was on Wii U. I picked up and played that one as well. And then Xenoblade Chronicles 2 came out like pretty early on in the Switch's lifespan.
Yeah.
I got around to playing that quite a bit later.
Okay.
But I did play through that one. It's a great game. Way too much fan service.
Yes.
So there are some issues with that game.
There's some artistic whiplash going from 1 to 2 to back to 3. It's like this. The slider went a little too far to one side there with your art design there. But
so thankfully, and what I have read about the making of 3 is that they listen to a lot of the feedback of 2, and so. Nice. Basically because of the backlash, they toned that down to where it's almost non-existent in 3. Almost. There are a few characters that have anatomical issues, but it's not played up the way that it was in 2 for fan service. So anyways, that's neither here nor there. But Xenoblade Chronicles 3, pretty much fixes a lot of the issues from 2. It takes a much more grown-up story as well. So
Okay.
you don't have to play any of the other games in the series in order
Nice.
to play 3.
Yeah.
It references the other games quite a bit, but it is not to the point where you actually need to have played them.
Sure.
There may be some questions about, oh, why does that person look that way? Why are these people so distinctly different? And that's because of 1 and 2, but it's not, it's never like a deep question or anything.
Sure. Pick up some context clues. You can keep moving forward.
Right. Yeah. It's just, or it's just never answered. Why do these people have little wings on their head? I don't know. Because there were people that had wings in their head in the first game. That's why.
There you go.
Anyways.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
So I guess the kind of the big question here, like in your own approach to it, like what is it about? Like how would you,
Yep.
I'm going to ask you, but how would you answer that question?
So the thing about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is that it is a JRPG that is very long. And I say JRPG, it's not turn-based in the way that like original Final Fantasies are turn-based. It uses systems that are similar to Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 that are more, even though you're kind of taking turns, it also uses some systems from like MMOs, the way that those work. So your attacks are going on cooldown timers and you're doing different things like that. So anyways, but it is JRPG in its scope. It is a very large game in all that it's trying to convey and the themes that it touches on. So let me set up the kind of the opening of the game. Is that there are these 2 factions in this world that you're on. There are these 2 factions that are constantly at war. And when you kill someone from the other faction, the person basically turns into energy, which is then sucked up and used by basically energy for your faction, for your people.
Okay.
So you're constantly at war because if you defeat other people from the other side, then your town, your people continue to live.
Sure.
The people in this world are born fully grown and only live for 10 years before they die. So that's the setup. Then basically they run into someone who's older. Right. Their existence is constantly at war. Yeah. So as you can imagine, a lot of this game is like, what is this for? Why are we doing this? When you're faced with these questions of what is life actually about, when you actually see someone who has somehow broken free of this. Well, there's an old man. What does that even mean to be old? Like, what is the point? Why have things gotten this way? And what is the point of life now that we're in it? And is there a point of life? Because there are certain characters who are very much closer to that 10-year mark that are going to die. You're going to die in 10 years. So it wrestles with a lot of these themes. And it uses a lot of the antagonists that you fight throughout the game answer that question in different ways. Okay. And they explain to you their philosophy of life, why it is that they have become the people that they have become and what they're willing to give up to continue living.
Interesting.
So those are just some of the themes. There's also, themes of connection. Eventually, I will say this game is extremely, it has a very pro-life message. Because when you get to a point in the game where you actually see children, I mean, it blows these characters' minds because they're like, what is this? How does this happen?
These tiny
Right. Yeah. And then to have that, and it's not crass, okay?
Sure.
To have that come from a marriage, from 2 people, like what does that mean? Like the love that these people share actually create new beings? Like how does that even work? And to see that wonder through someone's eyes who's not like experienced that their whole life, like, of course, a mom and a dad make a kid. Right. Like that's just, we take that for granted.
Yeah.
But to see that from the eyes of someone who is just completely at awe that, the binding together of 2 human beings actually creates new life and how wondrous that is a very poignant thing in the game.
Interesting.
And the last, I mean, there's so much to talk about.
Sure. Yeah.
But there's also one of the main antagonists, his reason for doing the things that he did is, I think, so masterfully written in this world that you come to find out is very cyclical. Obviously, because you're constantly at war, you're fighting against these other factions, and then you eventually have to find some sort of a truce with some of the characters so that you can continue to find out what's going on. I don't want to spoil anything, but the way in which the game causes you to sympathize with one of its main antagonists while also recognizing how in the wrong that the character is very wonderfully done. And and frankly, I think a lot of the themes that this game touches on and digs into over the course of, a 90-hour game. Sure. And it kind of has to be that way so that you can get all these different perspectives. The way that it builds to certain points in the game, I have not experienced in other video games.
That's cool.
Why I enjoy it so much. And I'll say, from the get-go of the game, it intrigued me.
Sure.
I thought this is a cool, context, cool world.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize in the first 10, 15, 20, 25 hours that this was going to be one of my favorite games of all time. It's kind of a culmination of everything. And I don't mean to be too pretentious, so forgive me for saying
no, it's fine.
But I've compared this to I've read some, the Russian literature that I've read is Dostoevsky. And the way that he writes, and my understanding is a lot of Russian literature is this way, is that it's not, the stories aren't necessarily always about kind of the plot arc, but it's about the moments, the scenes, if that makes sense. And all those scenes taken together, then you look back and, oh man, okay, now I see what's being built. Now I get it.
Yeah.
So the plot is runs along those scenes, but the scenes themselves are what really stick out. And I feel like that's a lot of this game is finding a new antagonist, finding, seeing their reason, why they're doing what they're doing. And then the plot, kind of figuring out why the world is the way that it is. It's got some really high moments in there, but it's also, it builds. It's not something that, oh man, this blows my mind from the first 5 hours. And, so the next 80 hours were fantastic. Something like Breath of the Wild, I feel like I kind of latched onto immediately of oh, I love this exploration loop. This is great. And then it continues for, 60 hours or whatever.
Right.
Whereas this one, I feel like it builds to the point where I look back at it, maybe 3/4 of the way through the game, and I'm like, wow, this really is a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
So,
I remember now, listening to the Backlog Breakdown and kind of your ongoing check-in on Xenoblade Chronicles 3 of kind of getting more like your mentality of it getting higher and higher as you played through it, as episode to episode of this game's really good. It kept getting more and more. For such a big concept story wise, are there ways the gameplay serves that story? And I don't want to diminish it if it doesn't, but I'm kind of curious if there's does that question make sense? Or is that
there? Yeah, I do. I think I know what you're asking.
Sure.
And just in terms of mechanics, not necessarily. I think there are ways in which the ties between your different characters does progress on the battlefield as well as in the quiet moments of the game. And that's something that this game has a lot of as well, that you can participate in, of just those moments of your characters. And that's something I didn't even get into necessarily.
Sure.
Your cast of characters.
Yeah,
of
yeah.
your 6 main characters that you have in your party, which grows over time, and you understand their different perspectives and what they've been through, and
Mm-hmm.
how that factors into it. And so there are, eventually you get ways to kind of fuse 2 characters together, for lack of a better, I don't want to explain it too much
Sure.
for the sake of giving things away. But that does kind of go hand in hand, because when that happens, the 2 characters see into each other's minds. And
Oh,
so they're
okay.
very, they don't like that, in the same way that I wouldn't like that,
Right.
especially because each of the characters has to be from the other faction.
Yeah.
So that does play into it a little bit,
Mhm.
but overall, in terms of, equipping your guys with different attacks and different, just equipment and different, not jobs, but whatever
Sure.
they're called. I can't remember,
Yeah.
in this game, skills and
Gotcha.
things like that.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
necessary.
Sure. Gotcha. Um, that's great. Anything that you kind of wish was different about it? Like anything could be better?
Oh man. I okay. I'll say that I found the game to be that maybe I shouldn't say very. I found the game to be easy through
Okay.
most of it. Perhaps that is because I did a lot of exploring throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed the world, and I enjoyed ticking off the things, all the little icons on my map.
Nice. Yeah.
So I probably
Feels
over
great.
leveled. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I feel like I didn't have to abuse the systems in order to win some really difficult fights.
Gotcha.
There were some difficult fights, don't get me wrong. I died a number of times, but overall, it was a pretty easy game in my experience with it. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
If there was a way, man, it's hard to say, like, because of the nature of, it takes a long time before I felt like, oh, this game is actually, this is really something special. Like, it's good when it starts
Yeah.
out. It hooked me from the beginning, but it took quite a while before I realized how great it was.
Yeah.
I wish that could have happened earlier, but
Sure.
how do you do that?
It's kind of like the slow burn is more satisfying for being a slow burn, and then like, the big reveal at the end, like the reveal of how much you've enjoyed the game, is kind of its own little special arc.
Yep.
I guess if it was 2030, do you think this game will ultimately be still your game of the decade, or do you think something else will supplant it?
Well, in recent memory, I've heard that Clair Obscur is supposed to be fantastic, and that sounds right up my alley.
Sure.
Turn-based RPG combat, things like that. But I don't. Here's the thing about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 as well, is that it was someone whose opinion I really trust hyped the game up for me.
Okay.
And so there was almost a part of my brain that was kind of like, is this really as good as he says? Is this really that good? And I will say, even, when it got to those moments where I'm like, oh yeah, this really is that good. Like, I'm surprised that a video game is going to these different places. Even just like with what I talked about earlier of like the value of life.
Yeah.
Especially in a world where you're killing people, all over the place. In monsters too, you try not to kill as many people because, anyways.
Sure. Yeah.
But they, where was I going with that? As time has gone on, as I've gotten more space from the game, in some ways I've grown even more fond of the game, because then I'm just reminded of some of the themes and some of the things that they do. Even some of the annoyances of the earlier games. There's a whole race of characters that are like these little puffball dog thingies called Napon that are so annoying in every other game. But the character who is a Napon, the primary character, there's another one that's okay, but the primary character who's a Napon in this game is one of the coolest characters. Like, he's like a sage. Every time he opens his mouth, he says something cool or very meaningful. I'm just like, how did they do this? These guys were so annoying in the other games. I hated them. So anyways, that your question was whether or not I think this is still going to be my favorite game of the decade. I think so, because there are other games that I've played so far this decade that I really enjoy. But because of the overall quality of this game and what it says and where it goes, there could be something that just comes out of left field and surprises me, but I don't foresee, like, there's nothing in my mind that I'm like, oh yeah, that game, GTA 6, that's definitely going to be it. No,
right? Yeah,
no, nothing like that comes to mind. Maybe Silksong if it ever comes out.
That's true. That's fair. I guess GTA 6 probably won't have the same sanctity of life leanings that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 probably has.
Not. Oh man, if the other games are any indication.
Yes. Are any other games that came out, or like, well, we talked about this, any other games that kind of like would also be a game of the decade, kind of bending the rules here if it was out of the decade or in the decade? Yeah. What else is on your mind?
Okay. So 2 games from a series that I really enjoy, and like you said, I'm just totally bending the rules. Because if the question were if there were any, like, what would be your second game of the decade? The one that comes to mind for me is Shin Megami Tensei 5.
Nice.
I understand that it is a very flawed game, especially in the story department. It is very stilted in the way that it tells its story. It strings you along, and it's got some cool stuff. But man, just the mechanics of that game are just fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And so I love that game. So nice. Even though I recognize it's very flawed, and it's probably a lot of people don't hold it in high regard as I do. So that one's kind of thrown out there. The other game is again, bending the rules a little bit. So if it were a game not of this decade that I played this decade, it would be Persona 3. Reload came out this decade, but Persona 3 FES was on PlayStation 2, so it's a remake of a PlayStation 2 game. Sure. And this is a game that I think your question earlier, did the mechanics kind of help bolster the theme of the game? And I do think it does that in a lot of different ways. Sure. But the theme of the game, it's a very dark game. Yeah. The theme is similar to Xenoblade Chronicles 3. There's a lot of themes of death, and so what does it mean to live? If you're going to die, and how do you fight against your inevitable death or something like that, or what do you do in these different situations? And it plays with those themes too. Okay, what does the death of a marriage look like to a child? Something like that. That are kind of one of the side themes throughout the game. So I really like the game for those themes. I really like the gameplay also. But yeah, Persona 3 is just one of my favorite games. So nice. Any way you can play it, there you go. I'd recommend it.
Man, I'm not as much JRPG guy, and so Persona and Shin Megami Tensei have been huge gaps, but.
And unfortunately, it seems like you can't play any of those games in under 40 hours. Right. They're all huge beasts, which is it's a shame because 5 is not well, and that's due to the nature of the game too. They're generally pretty difficult. Persona 3 Reload is not as difficult. It uses some quality of life things to make it quite a bit easier. But there's still going to be grinding, and it's still going to take a while. So maybe that one's 30 to 40. I don't know. I could be completely off there. I was like at least double that when I played the one on PlayStation 2. But on PlayStation 2, it's quite a bit more wonky than, a modern re-release is. So I get it. It's not for everyone, sure. I guess is what I'm saying. Even though I really enjoy it, it's not.
Yes. And that's what we're here for.
How long to beat has Persona 3 Reload at 64 hours? So never mind. Never mind. Nope, that's a stupid long game. Yeah.
Well, we're here to talk about the games that we enjoyed. So I'm glad to have you here. But our time is short. But before we go, what is one hope that you have for the rest of the decade?
Oh, man. Now I'm completely blindsided.
Oh, sorry.
It's just due to the culture of gaming right now. My hope for the rest of the decade is that we stop focusing so much on the. I guess what it has to do with it is the bloated budgets of video games nowadays. I'll bring up Clair Obscur again by. The first game by what I believe they were like Ubisoft devs.
Yeah.
It was not a very large team. but it's winning tons of awards. By every measure, it's a fantastic game, even if it's not the most polished thing in the world. If you really kind of have a vision for a game and dig into that vision, that's what I want to see, is passion in games is what I want to see, not just a perfunctory business decision, which I know that makes me sound like, oh, down with, capital. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you have passion and you can execute it well and you have some prowess in how you go about that, then people are going to see that for the most part. I think of, oh my gosh, the first game by the guy who does Deltarune.
Toby Fox, Undertale guy,
yeah, Undertale. There you go. I haven't even played the game, but that's highly regarded, and that game looks like Earthbound. Like or it looks like Mother on NES. So it doesn't have to be a AAA banger in order to be effective. Hollow Knight was made by a handful of people, guys. So that's what I want for the rest of the decade, is some passion.
More passion. Very nice. Very French of you. Going off quite obscure. More passion. That's what we want.
The passion.
Well, whatever. Well, Josh, one name, one game. What are you playing?
I am playing Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty HD.
Very nice. I am playing New Star GP. That and Yellow Taxi Goes Room I got in the little Fanatical bundle, so I'm playing some Steam Deck games. Well, thank you all. Or, sorry, Josh, first, thank you for joining me. Where else are you out on the internet?
I am at my podcast, The Backlog Breakdown, where we have long talks about video games, as you can probably tell. I like to talk sometimes about these things. But you can check us out all over the internet, The Backlog Breakdown. We've got a link tree.
Yes.
Linktree.com/The Backlog Breakdown.
There you go. And I'll link that below in the description. So check that out. Check them out. I highly recommend Josh and Nate on the Backlog Breakdown. And thank you all for listening in. You can follow us on the major podcasting services or on YouTube. You can press all the good buttons while you're there if you enjoyed this conversation. You can find us on the proper socials, Quick Play Pod, and let us know, is Xenoblade Chronicles 3, is that the game of the decade? That's all the time we have for today. Thanks. Bye.